Hello and welcome, I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top global news stories. The Indian Army says last night was the first peaceful one in days along the India-Pakistan border after intense cross-border fire following Operation Sindoor. Blackouts are easing, markets have reopened and no new violations were reported in Jammu, Punjab or Gujarat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he'll personally meet with Vladimir Putin in Istanbul on Thursday, just hours after Donald Trump urged Kyiv to accept Russia's offer of direct talks. Zelensky calls for a ceasefire to begin on Monday, as Western leaders back a 30-day pause to lay ground for peace. Hamas says it will free Israeli-American soldier Eden Alexander ahead of Trump's Middle East visit, calling it a gesture to aid in ceasefire talks and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. Alexander, 21, is believed to be the last living US hostage in Gaza. Trump calls his pending release monumental news. Washington and Beijing hail substantial progress after 2 days of trade talks in Geneva, with a deal struck to reduce the US deficit and launch a new economic dialogue. Details remained under wraps until later today, but China promises good news for the world. 68 million Filipinos head to the polls today in midterms, seen as a showdown between Marcos and Duterte camps, with control of the Senate key to a possible impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. Voters are also choosing lawmakers, governors, mayors and city councillors, with results expected late tonight. Israeli airstrikes hit Yemen's Hodeidah region after Tel Aviv warned Houthi forces to evacuate 3 key ports, marking a new escalation in the Red Sea conflict. The Houthis, who have been firing on Israel in solidarity with Gaza, say the strikes follow a pattern of Israeli attacks on Sana'a and other Yemeni targets. President Trump says that today he will sign an executive order to cut prescription drug prices to match levels paid in other rich nations. The order will enforce most favored nation pricing, slashing costs by up to 80%. Albanians cast ballots in a high-stakes election as Prime Minister Edi Rama bids for an unprecedented 4th term, promising EU membership amid corruption claims and a divided opposition. Results are due by Tuesday, with Rama facing old rival Sali Berisha in a contest shaped by scandals and reform uncertainty. In a latest turn of events in the India-Pakistan standoff, despite a ceasefire agreement, Pakistan's repeated border violations escalated tensions, leading Indian forces to remain on high alert. After several days of clashes along the northern and western borders, the region saw a period of relative peace between the night of May the 11th and 12th, according to the Indian Army. Lieutenant General Rajiv Gaya, Director General of Military Operations, confirmed that a DGMO-level talk with Pakistan will take place at 12 noon Indian Standard Time today. This will be the second meeting between the DGMOs of both countries to address the escalating India-Pakistan tensions and the combat situation. Meanwhile, sources reveal that Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar informed US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on May the 1st that India will strike terrorists in Pakistan. The call came shortly after the deadly Pahalgam attack on April the 22nd that killed 26 tourists, including 25 Indians and 1 Nepalese. Sources quote Jaishankar saying, "We will hit the terrorists in Pakistan and there should be no doubt about it." In another development, ISRO chairman V. Narayanan announced that 10 satellites are currently operating non-stop to safeguard the nation's security. Speaking at the 5th convocation of Central Agricultural University at Agra Tala. He emphasised that monitoring India's 7,000-kilometre coastline and ensuring national safety rely heavily on satellite and drone technology. We are joined by our guest today, Brigadier Rajan Jamwal, who is a defence expert currently in the region of Jammu. Brigadier Jamwal, what do you think was the single biggest result that India wants today from the communications between the two, the call between the DGMOs?
I think we would want certainly dismantling of the terror infrastructure. I mean, of course, Pakistan is going to deny that it ever had those terror infrastructure, but that is for the world to see. What is going to be a dispute could be the monitoring mechanism, that how this will be monitored in no further terrorist camps or exist in Pakistan or new ones proper. Because once we have struck some camps, Pakistan always has the ability to shift locations. You shut down at one place which has been destroyed, you open up another place. Now, how will that be monitored? That monitoring would be the crux of the discussion between India and Pakistan, DGMOs. That is going to happen at 12 noon, and I think we'll come to know by evening what exactly would have happened. Also, I think before this thing, the formal talks take place, some kind of arrangement would have been worked out, because the way Pakistan is rattled right now, choices before it are very, very limited. They're very, very limited. But then the kind of hybrid political system they have, any irrational decision could also be taken, because suddenly they do not care for their own population. I mean, it is quite apparent. So, irrational decision could be taken. That is where the world comes into play, because this could be a threat to world peace. This could be the way the reports are coming with some US aircraft which monitor the radiation levels and are flying over Pakistan. There are reports of some radioactive leaks in Pakistan for whatever reasons. All that put together puts Pakistan.
Okay, Brigadier Jamwal, we saw a night of relative calm last night, which is the first since many. If shooting starts again along the LOC or elsewhere, what's India's first military move?
We have already stated. I mean, you see what happens is till now, the Navy hasn't come into action. Its role has been limited to just posturing and isolating the Karachi port. The Pakistan Navy is in shambles today. They have only one functional submarine, the other are under repairs. Pakistan knows that. We have the ability to reduce the complete Karachi port, Karachi to shambles, put it on fire the way we did it in 71. From 71 to date, the technology has changed, our reach has changed. Of course, Pakistan Navy has also upgraded. But now there is a very, very tremendous gap between the Indian and Pakistani Navy, both in technology as well as in numbers. While in the air defense and air we have demonstrated our technological and numerical superiority. The Navy would probably also come into play. Plus, if you remember, we had given a list of 21 targets, that is the terrorist targets. Only 9 have been struck till date. Still open, 12 more to go, plus repeat strikes on their military installations. And Pakistan knows that there is no way it can stop. You see, there are a number of technologies which have been unleashed in this war, which the world is slowly coming to know. Even the world at large never knew that India had developed these technologies. They were thinking we are dependent on S-400, this thing. It is now only they are coming across indigenous technologies like D4, Akash-T, all integrated through satellite navigation and satellite surveillance. I mean, the world was not aware. We have upgraded to that level, and that too, all in-house, all make in India, which has made a tremendous difference in this short 3-day exchange of fire we had between both the countries. So, if they do not agree to this, a repeat dose may be required, and then it extends to what level, escalates to what level, nobody knows.
Okay, Brigadier Rajan Jamwal, thank you very much for joining us and for your insight. We now move on to some more crucial news. The United States and China will release details of what both sides call substantial progress in trade talks held in Geneva. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer met face-to-face with China's Vice Premier He Lifeng and commerce officials over the weekend. This marks the first high-level meeting since US President Donald Trump's tariffs on China hit a minimum rate of 145%. Beijing retaliated with 125% duties on US goods. 15 hours of talks. Both sides praised the candid and constructive atmosphere. They agreed to set up a new trade consultation mechanism. Meanwhile, WTO chief Ngozi welcomed the positive outcome, calling it a significant step forwards. China says a joint communique will be published, signalling a possible de-escalation in the bitter trade war that has rocked global markets. Here's what Li Feng, the Chinese vice premier, has said.
就彼此关心的经贸问题开展了深入交流，会谈氛围呢是坦诚的、深入的、具有建设性的，取得了实质性的进展，达成了重要的共识。双方一致同意建立中美经贸磋商机制，明确双方牵头人就各自关切的经贸问题开展进一步的磋商。中美双方将尽快敲定有关的细节，并且将于5月12日发布会谈达成的联合声明。
We're now joined by Andrew KP Lung, China strategist located in Hong Kong, to discuss this further. Andrew, thank you for joining us. These talks have been a long time coming. Both sides have cited substantial progress. We'll learn more about it later today, but what must be in today's communique for you to call this a real breakthrough?
Well, the real breakthrough is that whereas President Trump was touting his coercive tactics, wanting President Xi to line up in the whole line of supplicants begging for negotiation, which was, of course, not going to happen. Because while this trauma is unsustainable for the Chinese economy, it's even more unsustainable for the United States, because most of the products you can't wave a magic wand and seek and find alternatives. Most of them are made in China or China embedded in it in terms of rare earths, components, parts, and logistics. And also there is a pushback about American people and in the stock market, in the bond market, and even California, who's now seeking the first steps in the state constitution towards independence. So I think that there is, on both sides, there is a momentum towards some sort of a deal, but it's early days yet, and what happened right now is that both sides agree to really set up mechanisms so that the talk can dwell into the deep-seated imbalance between these two countries. On the side of the United States, it sits it's not getting a fair deal with the open trade for China in terms of protection of certain industries, lack of access for American investors, and perceived less than full compliance with WTO rules. But for China, it's the United States is using coercive tactics and trying to stop or derail China's rise, and is imposing all sorts of restrictions against China's trade. So I think that both sides are aware of these dynamics, and I think that for the future, if at least a mechanism is now being agreed to focus on the real imbalance in terms of perhaps opening up the China market more for American investments and for American businesses, and making it a more level playing field for investors, and also bringing some jobs back to the United States in the sense of setting up production operations invested by China, but operating in the United States. And I think that will be welcomed by President Trump and by the likes of Elon Musk. So I think that there are a lot to talk about, and I think what is positive is that at least the details of the agenda of the negotiation are being worked out, and the prognosis is good, but it doesn't mean that all the imbalance and conflicts are going to be resolved immediately.
Yes.
But I think that at least a momentum is now being set towards a solution.
Andrew, can Beijing sell any tariff cut at home without the country looking weak now that this trade war between the two largest economies seems to be simmering down?
No, I think that Beijing is making it quite clear that in order for negotiations to start, China should not be placed in a position of a supplicant, in other words, facing unilateral tariffs. And of course, China has already also raised the tariffs. I think that to be fair, both sides should really suspend these tariffs. But of course, President Trump doesn't agree to that. But be that as it may, both sides agree to talk, and there is a good reason to believe that tariffs are going to be lowered on both sides. It depends on the progress.
Yes, and Andrew, do you think, obviously, when these tariffs were going tit for tat with one another, there were strong words and aggressive stance between the two countries? Is this a new beginning for the two world's largest economies?
Well, it's an opening for de-escalation of the relationship and finding a way forward towards the situation, because the present tit-for-tat aggression or action and reaction is, as I explained, unsustainable on both sides.
Yes. Andrew K.P. Lung, thank you very much for joining us on the programme, as always. We move on once again and now over to Europe as Russia and Ukraine truce talks progress. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he would be willing to meet Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Turkey personally, after Donald Trump said direct talks were needed to determine whether peace was possible. Listen in to what Zelensky has said.
В цей четвер, 15 травня, в Туреччині. І очікую на Путіна в Туреччині. Особисто. І сподіваюся, що Путін цього разу не шукатиме причин, чому він щось не може. Ми готові говорити, щоб закінчити війну. Четвер. Туреччина. Президент Трамп підтримав. Всі лідери підтримують.
The Kremlin did not immediately respond to Zelensky's offer, and the Ukrainian leader did not say whether he would still attend if Russia refused a 30-day ceasefire proposed by Kiev and its allies. Meanwhile, Putin on Sunday proposed to resume talks between the two sides held in Istanbul in March 2022, but he did not respond to the 30-day ceasefire proposal put forward by Kiev's allies. Moscow and Kiev had not held face-to-face negotiations since March of 2022, shortly after Russia and Ukrainian war broke out. US President Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform earlier President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. He has further said that Ukraine should agree to this immediately. And we're now joined by Jim Rice, Professor of International Law, who joins us from Vigan in the Philippines. Jim, this meeting between the two leaders of the two countries that have been at war for the last 3 years seems unprecedented, doesn't it?
Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, Putin's apparent agreement or willingness to meet in Istanbul for face-to-face talks, I think, is completely disingenuous. It also follows the very significant meeting over the past few days of the coalition of the willing, the pro-Western European countries, including Keir Starmer and Chancellor Merz and President Macron. And they've basically been threatening or promising serious tariffs if Russia doesn't engage in serious peace negotiations. My position, my feeling is completely in agreement with the Europeans, which is how can you have peace negotiations or a peace conference at the same time that fighting is literally going on? Putin has consistently refused to agree to any kind of ceasefire apart from his fake ceasefire over his parade in front of the Kremlin. So that's the first point. But the second point, I think, is more important. And the second point is basically this. Putin does not want peace at all, because think about it. If there were to be a peace, if there were to be a semi-permanent ceasefire, how is Putin going to explain this to the people of Russia? He invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. So far, they've sustained more than 700,000 casualties. This war was supposed to take less than a week. What has he obtained? What has he achieved in all of that time with all of these deaths and all of these wounded soldiers and civilians killed? He's achieved nothing. If Putin goes home with this ceasefire or some kind of peace agreement, I believe his days are numbered as the so-called president of Russia.
Yes, and Jim, what have you made of Donald Trump's mediation on all this? We've obviously seen another Truth Social post from him urging Ukraine to accept the deal, but also Putin's reluctancy to sign this 30-day ceasefire that's been proposed by both Ukraine and the United States for weeks now. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that as everyone knows, Trump is very pro-Putin. Trump has always been pro-Putin, and Putin has consistently aided and abetted Trump's rise to power in the United States in terms of, even before the election in 2016, in terms of shady business deals with the Russians. So apart from that, it's obvious that Trump is very pro-Putin. However, I think now with Trump getting more secure in his second term, he probably feels that he needs Putin less than he did before. And so he's been expressing some frustration of late because I think he really wants to achieve some kind of peace deal, but I think it's not going to happen.
Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. We now move over to the Middle East, where Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is all set to head to the United Arab Emirates days before US President Donald Trump is due to visit the Gulf state. US Chief Negotiator Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi met for 3 hours in the Omani capital for the fourth round of negotiations since April the 2nd. Meanwhile, the US said it was encouraged by talks with Iran after a meeting in Oman, but the two sides remain divided on key questions, including whether Tehran will be allowed to enrich its own uranium. Iran insists its nuclear activities are entirely peaceful and that it will never seek to develop or acquire nuclear weapons. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said that United States calls to dismantle nuclear facilities is unacceptable and that it does not seek nuclear weapons. Listen in.
در حقیقت جمهوری اسلامی ایران دنبال سلاح هسته‌ای نی. اینا هم گفتن که میخوام مطمئن بشن که ما به سلاح هسته‌ای نمیخوایم دست پیدا کنیم. ما با تمام وجود آماده بودیم، ولی این که بیان و اعلام بکنن که ما در حقیقت بحث صلح‌آمیز بودن تحقیقات در انرژی هسته‌ای رو کنار خواهیم گذاشت و بعد اینا.
Staying in the region once again, Hamas says it will release Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander, who is believed to be the last living captive with US nationality in Gaza, as a part of its efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement. The decision comes ahead of President Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East on Tuesday. Hamas said it would also intend to facilitate a deal for the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Gaza has been under an Israeli blockade for 70 days now. Donald Trump celebrated the announcement of Eden's release. He said in a Truth Social post that it's a monumental breakthrough. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has said that it has been informed by the US of the Hamas intention to release Alexander as a gesture towards the Americans, and that the move was expected to lead the negotiations on further hostages. Born in Tel Aviv but raised in New Jersey, 21-year-old Alexander was serving in an elite infantry unit on the border with Gaza when he was captured by Hamas terrorists during the October 7th attack. Of the 251 hostages taken during Hamas's 2023 attack, 59 remain in the enclave, up to 24 of whom are believed to be alive still. 5 of the hostages in Gaza are believed to be US citizens, and Alexander was thought to be the only one remaining still alive. In a related development, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 12 people in Gaza, according to the territory's civil defense agency. Most of the victims were in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Spokesman Mahmoud Basal has said that Israeli jets hit 3 tents sheltering displaced families. Along with the dead were 4 children, aged 2 to 5 and 2 women, according to some reports. Footage showed rescuers pulling a wounded baby from the rubble as well. 3 more people died in a separate strike on Khan Yunis. 1 civilian was killed and 3 others were injured in Gaza City also. The Israeli military has not confirmed the details but said its air force struck over 50 targets across Gaza. 5 houses were also reportedly destroyed using explosives. The death toll in Gaza continues to climb as airstrikes show no sign of slowing down. Now we move over to Europe, where UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will unveil a landmark immigration policy aimed at drastically cutting migration numbers amid a surge in support for anti-immigration parties. Starmer vows to end what he calls Britain's failed experiment in open borders, which saw migration rise to 1 million a year. Downing Street confirmed that the new plan will make it harder to qualify for settlement and citizenship, extending the required stay from 5 to 10 years. The government will also toughen English language rules, requiring all adult dependents to demonstrate basic proficiency. Starmer said he's keeping his promise to restore control and cut migration, adding that he's delivering through tough measures. The immigration white paper will be presented to Parliament later today by Interior Minister Yvette Cooper, who said the plan will include new powers to deport foreign nationals convicted of any offence, not just those given prison sentences over a year. The government will also target lower skilled migration. Low visa rules will raise the threshold for skilled worker visas, requiring foreign workers to hold a degree. Cooper announced a target to cut 50,000 lower skilled worker visas this year alone. High-skilled workers, including nurses, doctors, engineers, and AI experts, will be fast-tracked under the new policy. The government faces growing pressure to address illegal channel crossings, with over 36,800 migrants arriving last year. This year, at least 84 people have died during the perilous journey across the English Channel, including 14 children, according to the Missing Migrants Project. In other news, the Trump administration plans to accept a luxury Boeing 747-8 jet as a gift from the Qatari royal family, sources have confirmed. The aircraft, worth nearly $400 million, is set to temporarily serve as Air Force One before being donated to US President Donald Trump's presidential library after he leaves office. Trump appeared to confirm the plan on his social media platform Truth Social, defending the move as a free and transparent deal while accusing Democrats of politicizing the issue. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer slammed the proposal, calling it premium foreign influence with extra legroom. Good governance groups and Democrats have raised alarms, calling the gift unethical and potentially unconstitutional. The White House remains that the gift would be handled legally, with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stressing that any gift from a foreign government is accepted in full compliance with US law. Qatari officials told that no final decision has been made on the transfer. Trump previously toured the Qatari-owned jet in February while it was parked near his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Trump is expected to visit Qatar later this week, though officials confirm the plane will not be presented or accepted during that trip. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.